Episode 7: The Space-Matter Evolutionary Scale, Quantum Paradoxes, and the Mechanical Nature of Time. Introduction. Welcome to this 7th installment with the Manifesto of Cyclic Quantum Cosmology, CQC. In the previous chapters, we explored the boundaries of the multidimensional bulk, the highly inelastic kinematic collision between branes, and the triggering of the spontaneous nucleation process of fundamental strings at the end of the previous eon. We redefined three-dimensional space as a modern ether, a tangible, dynamic, and self-organized grid composed of quanta of geometric excitation, the space strings. Up to this point, thanks to this solid structural foundation, we have been able to explain and interpret with absolute consistency the phenomena of cosmic inflation, the genesis of ordinary matter, the true nature of dark matter and dark energy, the expansion of the universe, the conservation of entropy, the galaxy rotation anomaly, and the phenomenon of gravity itself, demonstrating how each of them is the logical and natural consequence of our geometric mechanical model. Today, we tear down the invisible wall between the microcosm and the macrocosm. We apply the formalism of CQC to the greatest puzzles in the history of science, the double-slit experiment, the dual nature of light, and the Schrödinger's cat paradox. We must clarify a fundamental pillar, the moment we accept that every single entity in the universe is created by the geometric and binary interaction of strings and branes. The explanation of major physical problems, which mainstream science renders inexplicable or justifies with almost magical abstractions, finally transforms into something extremely simple to understand, visualize, and explain. Nature does not do magic. Nature is a kinematic mechanism. Part 1. The fractal perspective, from the infinitesimal to the visible. To understand how space transforms into light and how light condenses into matter, we must reset the way we visualize the constituents of reality. Academic physics has taught us to think of the atom or quarks as isolated material points floating in the vacuum. In our model, this concept collapses. In the real infinitesimal dimensions of the brain, even a single atom or a single quark is not an isolated entity. It is an agglomerate composed of millions or billions of interconnected strings and branes. What we perceive in the macrocosm as solid mass or stable elements is nothing more than the collective and combined effect of billions of these microtensions and infinitesimal charges packed into the same lattice. Everything stems from the exact same binary pairing, strings and branes, or vacuum and energy, hardware and software. Part 2. The continuous line. Wave, photon, mass. Let us imagine a straight line, a true evolutionary scale of the string. On this line, space, the wave, the photon, and heavy matter are simply different load stages of the exact same entity. The ground level, the vacuum state $vert, zero wrangle $, the empty string. At the extreme left, we find the space string, $, in its ground state of minimal vibrational energy. It is the geometric zero, the pure hardware that defines the geometric continuity of space and the necessary channel for energy to exist. The wave phase, the excited state $vert, on wrangle $, moving along the line, the branes, energy, step aboard the space strings. When a string hosts a brane, the bit turns on and switches to state $vert, on wrangle $, in the local Hilbert space. Exploiting its structural tolerance, the string manifests the various frequencies of the wave spectrum. As the number of branes stepping aboard increases, the string progressively passes through the various stages of waves until it reaches the maximum limit of the photon. Subsequently, more branes are added, continuing toward the state of matter. As long as we remain within the wave spectrum, the first branes step aboard simply and spontaneously, accommodating the fluidity of the medium. On the contrary, for additional branes to step aboard beyond the photon limit, drastic external causes must intervene, colossal pressures such as those inside the core of a star, or extreme energetic impacts in particle accelerators. It is these external forces that forcibly alter the natural state of the string plus brane combination. Furthermore, there is a macroscopic geometric implication. The more branes step aboard and condense into matter, the more empty hardware space is generated and found free in the surrounding universe. The limiting case. The photon, as energy increases through natural pathways, the frequency rises until it encounters the first level of free saturation, the photon limit. The photon is a string loaded to the maximum of its spontaneous wave capacity. In this state, energy slides from one string to another as a pure torsional oscillation, propagating at the maximum speed allowed by the modern ether, the speed of light c. Part 3. The mechanical redefinition of time and the speed of light. Here we arrive at the conceptual turning point that redefines the dogmas of modern physics. Mainstream physics takes the speed of light as an absolute constant but cannot explain why that limit exists. In our geometric mechanical model, the explanation is disarmingly simple. What is time? Time is not a fluid dimension or an abstraction, but the relative sliding parameter that measures the kinematic progression of our brain as it moves through the bulk and slides through the lattice of space strings from one string to the immediately adjacent one. If there is a sliding motion, there is a finite entity called time that can be measured. Since the photon is the maximum spontaneous load that the string can carry while maintaining its stretched shape, the speed of light is not a magical constant, but represents the ultimate speed of propagation of transverse excitation along space strings. This is why it is kinematically impossible to exceed the speed of light in our spacetime, because an instant after this sliding limit, the string saturates, distorts under the excess energy load, and collapses into heavy matter. Mass. Pushing the system beyond that threshold means instantly forcing the wave to break and transform into a solid body. This also means that the unit of time changes if there are more brains aboard a string. The more brains we load, the more geometric deformation the string undergoes. And because the string is deformed, the elastic element stretches, and the mechanical sliding of the brain toward the next string slows down. It is for this purely mechanical reason that gravity and velocity slow down the passage of time. It is not a magic trick of abstract spacetime, but the geometric hardware, the residual deformation tensor dollars, mu dollar, which, deforming under the load, takes more time to process the passage of the next bit. Can we calculate all of this mathematically? Absolutely. We know experimentally that time recorded by clocks in cosmic space and on Earth is different. In the vacuum of space, the string hosts fewer brains and is at rest, whereas on Earth, the string is affected by a higher density of brains, already possessing a structural deformation that lengthens the geometric path and causes the brain to slide with different timings. Today, it is possible to develop mathematical models and computer simulations in which we simulate this phenomenon in its various geometric combinations, precisely verifying whether theory and simulations match real data perfectly. Part 4. The double-slit case and Schrödinger's cat, mechanics versus magic. And it is precisely here, at the limit of the photon, that quantum physics surrendered to the absurd inventing wave-particle duality. But if we use our elementary interpretive key, the explanation of the double-slit experiment becomes crystal clear. When we fire a single photon toward the two slits, the photon travels within the space string lattice, the hardware. As the excited state moves, the geometric perturbation propagates into the surrounding weave. The wave that passes through both slits and creates the interference pattern is not the photon splitting in two, but the geometric fabric of hardware space being tensioned and perturbed by the passage of the charge. The difference between seeing the photon as a wave or as a particle mass is infinitesimal, a geometric and binary blink of an eye. You see the wave when the excited state $vert unwrangled dollar slides freely without obstacles in the lattice, propagating its vibration into the surrounding hardware space. You see the particle mass at the exact instant it impacts the barrier or measuring instrument. In that infinitesimal moment of impact, the sliding abruptly stops. The energy load localizes entirely at one point, deforming the elastic structure of the target string. We can hypothesize, for example, that due to this forced stop, one additional brain is suddenly loaded onto the string, and it is precisely at that moment that the photon wave, receiving the additional +1 bit, localizes and instantly transforms into a photon particle. This instantly resolves the famous Schrödinger's cat paradox as well. Mainstream physics claims that a cat locked in a box exists in a magical superposition of states until an observer opens the box. In our model, the explanation is purely logical. The cat and the vial mechanism belong to the macrocosm, clusters of billions of strings. When the atomic particle decays via the phase transition of the string, the geometric shock wave has already mechanically altered the structure of the surrounding strings. The cat is already either alive or dead. When we open the box to look, we send light photons that hit the system and bounce back into our eye. The act of measuring is not a miracle of the mind, but the final mechanical impact in the chain. This final impact links the system's hardware with our measuring instrument's hardware, mechanically stabilizing the geometry of the involved strings and translating the binary information into our visible macrocosm. Part 5. Multidimensional Collapse. The Secret of Entanglement. Recalling Chapter 5 of our manifesto, let us remember that our string is not a flat line, but a geometric anchor extending across higher dimensions in the multidimensional bulk, $, with $5. What happens at the exact moment of collapse, when we force the photon beyond its critical limit, or when two interconnected photons are generated from a single original energy node? When energy exceeds the critical tolerance density of our 4 dimensions, the state of the string undergoes a temporary disconnection from the surface of the brain, allowing the photon or its binary information to transit through the extra-dimensional quantum limbo. Here, the mystery of quantum entanglement is solved, explaining why two particles separated by billions of kilometers remain instantly connected. In our 4 dimensions, we see two distinct photons far apart in space. But in the extra-dimensional bulk, Those two photons are connected by a single elastic string, an extra-dimensional bridge. Since the distance between the anchor points on the brane drops to zero when projected along the extra-dimensional axis $$ in the bulk, the change of state occurs instantaneously. There is no magical signal traveling through space at superluminal speeds. Information flows through the geometric shortcut of the bulk, where the macroscopic distance is zero. Part 6. The end of the line, radioactive saturation. If we continue to move along the evolutionary line beyond the stage of stable ordinary matter, the forced accumulation of charges in the lattice leads to absolute saturation in heavy radioactive elements like uranium. At the microscopic level, uranium is a colossal geometric cluster in which billions of strings and branes are packed on top of one another. In this extreme configuration, the strings have exhausted all their multi-dimensional elasticity and structural tolerance required to hold that surplus energy. Radioactive decay and nuclear fission are pure mechanical structural failure. Under an intolerable load, the string gives way and violently expels excess branes in the form of radiation to lighten itself, relieve the elastic tension of the tensor $mu, and move backward along the evolutionary line toward a more porous, lightweight, and stable geometric configuration. Conclusion. As you have seen, when we stop using abstract formulas detached from reality and begin viewing the cosmos as a mechanical weave of hardware strings and software branes, the universe loses all absurd mysticism and regains its magnificent original simplicity. By altering bit density, defining time as sliding motion, and leveraging the higher dimensions of the geometric string, nature manufactures empty space, propagates the wave, bends the photon through the slits, determines the mechanical fate of the cat in the box, instantaneously connects distant points in the cosmos, and splits radioactive atoms. A single kinematic and geometric law to govern every scale of reality. In the upcoming episodes, we will make the leap from the theoretical matrix to real matter. In episode 8, we will take this binary code structure to analyze the particle zoo discovered in accelerators like CERN. We will demonstrate how the clash between M-theory and the Lund model is resolved by recognizing in color string tension the mechanical rigidity of hardware $$ under load. Immediately after, in episode 9, we will extend this program sequence $vert 0 wrangle vert 1 wrangle vert 11 wrangle vert 111 wrangle $, to the structuring of complex matter, proving that the periodic table of elements and its saturation limits are not chaotic entities, but the direct geometric consequence of charge crowding on the spatial lattice. The universe is mechanical, elastic, and simple. Help us prove it. Share this chapter, leave a comment below, and if you are a researcher, student, or physicist ready to translate this fantastic geometry into formulas or collaborate on computer simulation models, contact us. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next episode.